Speaker. It's a good piece of legislation and I commend it to the House.
I call Claire Curran.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd like to say that both these bills are actually very important bills because they go right to the heart of the relationship between citizens and government, or citizens and the state, which is essentially about the trust that's held between the information that citizens provide to the state and how that information is used and exercised, and which is why Labor is supporting both of these bills. They're both important bills. I'd like to commend the work that's been done on the bills in the Select Committee and the effort that's gone in on all around the House on these bills. I'd also like to just make mention of the fact of what was just said by the previous member around the supposed antics and reference to the ghost of David Garrett. This is actually one of the reasons why these bills are so important. These bills are so important in terms of ensuring that there are provisions in place for the security of information and how information is used. And I'd like to just read to you some words that were said just around 10 days ago by our Privacy Commissioner, Marie Schroff, in her annual report about the importance of privacy and the importance of people's information. And she said that the public is increasingly suspicious of handing over personal information as complaints reach a record high in our country. She said in the year to June 30th, her office had received 1,142 complaints, which topped a steady rise in the last 5 years. Now, what those figures represent is that there is increasing concern amongst the public about how personal information was being used, that the link between public trust and responsible stewardship hadn't been made in the minds of some people. And she said that in 2012 that the most complained about organisations were all government agencies, with the ACC taking the top spot with 173 complaints. And I did want to just run through a few of these because they are important, and they, as I said, they do go to the very heart of that important relationship of trust, and about how government chooses to deal with it on a systemic basis, right across government, and not just at an individual agency, departmental or ministry level. And Marie Schroff, in the Privacy Commissioner's annual report, said that data breach in March from ACC was a watershed moment for the public sector, which exposed weaknesses at a systemic and governance level and highlighted the integral nature of data management in the public sector and at all levels of the organisation, and that the lack of commercial drivers meant that public trust must be clearly demonstrated as necessary to effective government. And I think that's very important, Mr Speaker, because when we're looking at these bills and what they do, which do go some way to addressing some of these issues, but not nearly far enough, that there is and needs to be recognition from right around the House of the importance of these issues and how they're dealt with, and that there needs to be, and it would be very good to see, clear support from across the House for law changes that require notification of affected individuals. And I also would like to note that that the government was, when the Privacy Commissioner released her report, her annual report, that the government was yet to respond to most recommendations of the Commission's August 2011 review of privacy report. I'd just like to make mention of the top complaints that were received, because I think the most important point that was being made here is that the privacy breaches that were appearing were all coming from government agencies, including ACC, as we know, the New Zealand Police Department of Corrections, the Ministry of Social Development, the Department of Labour, Immigration New Zealand, the Inland Revenue Department, Housing New Zealand and the Civil Aviation Authority. They were the top agencies that were reporting breaches. Now, the fact that those breaches were being reported is a good thing, and it's a healthy thing, but the remedies as to how they're to be dealt with is the next important issue. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to, make mention of, and I think a number of my colleagues across the House have made mention of the systemic issues that have occurred, particularly in the last year, and that the fact that they've only been reported, we've had reports in just recent months about these. We're up to around between, I think, 30 to 40,000 individuals their breaches of privacy have been notified as a result of some of these issues that have come to light. And they haven't come to light, unfortunately, because of self-notification. They've come to light because they've been exposed, and the IRD's breaches, 32 breaches, which represented 6,379 individuals. ACC, as we know, is a well-known case, 6,000 individuals in data has been made available to the public. The Ministry of Social Development, 7,300 files were made available. And I don't know what the last count has been. Maybe one of my colleagues can help me here with the NovaPay breaches and the information that's been provided. But the last count sometime in November was 8,000 individuals affected. Now, that's more than 30,000 if you do a count up of around that. And I also want to make mention of it's the tip of the iceberg is what it is. A small town, but it is the tip of the iceberg. And I also want to make mention of the really good work that's been done by my colleague Darian Fenton in the immigration area around the breaches, and I'm sure she will talk about this herself. But the breaches that have occurred within immigration and the effect that that's having on those individuals, and how and what that actually means. I think the major point to be made here is that when you have, as I think is agreed around the House, that when you do have issues of privacy breaches, of breaches of information and the impact on individuals, that you have to deal with it at a governance level, and that is extremely important, and that therefore, which is why there is a bill which has been pulled from the ballot, called the Electronic Data Safety Bill, which actually follows on from what's being discussed here tonight, and which there is reasonable support around the House for both these bills, that follows on about how to deal with these issues, which is essentially is establishing a commission of inquiry into those privacy breaches that have occurred in the last few years, and as I've just outlined, is the effect of them here in the last 12 months and across all of those government agencies. And it looks at what the capacity across government is to respond to those breaches, tries to look into how they've occurred, and then, most importantly, looks at some remedies for dealing with them so that they're not happening again in the future. And there's no doubt that they've been acknowledged, all of these breaches, but unfortunately, Mr Speaker, there has been a tendency, which we've heard tonight, to try and, from the government side, to try and say that things occasionally go wrong, that there's no big deal here, it's human error. Well, I think these issues are a bit more than just human error on an individual agency basis. There are systemic issues here. This is the digital environment. We do have to address these issues on a systemic level across government, and I do hope that when this bill comes up for debate that there is serious discussion around it and that there is a support across the House.
I call Mike Sabin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A short call on this